Hey Tyler, random question, but if you were in a position to do so, would you reintroduce the M60 to the military? I've never really used it, so no. I would say no, flatly, kind of. Um, and honestly, I've been out since 2009, so I can't tell you what things are now. I just like the fucking way it looks when it shoots. I think it looks pretty fucking cool, but everything's getting lighter and smaller. I've done a bunch over the last 10 years of like middling level research into new MiG platforms, lightweight to medium weight machine gun platforms. And it seems like that entire subsystem of weapon is in a bit of a holding point right now. Excuse me. Because basically, to explain this to everyone else, I think this is going into my M249 conversation. Some people like the M249. I didn't like it that much. I just thought it was too much gun to have not as much gun, basically. But the platform could get fixed to be a little bit better. If you're the same guy that said, boxes are standard, I know, fucking mag boxes are standard. It's not that. It's just that mag box is just difficult to fuck with if the goddamn rounds fell inside of it. So it's just a lot of engineering issues to get the M249 out, and more than likely those could be cleaned up to make it a better overall platform. I've been looking into medium and light machine guns more and more. By the way, the machine guns for you civilians at home are for. It sounds the same kind of up and down, but basically they are designed to be fired at the cyclic rate and survive that for a while. Cyclic rate means you hold it down and they shoot out like 900 rounds in a minute. That's kind of what we're talking about. There's guns that can do that, but they're not designed for it. The M16 can shoot something in a ballpark of like 1,000 rounds in a minute, technically, if you had a magazine that was big enough, but it would probably blow the gun out past that because it's air cooled. You can't switch the barrel out. It's a whole different thing. So designed for continuous automatic fire, usually for suppression. But the thing about that is that was a weapon type that was largely created and perfected for trench warfare that happened to have a lot of functionality and use outside of trench warfare. But as we've moved away from the era where those medium and light machine guns, the Browning automatic rifle, the M1911, I think I'm fucking up. Browning water cooled 30, Browning air cooled 30, Browning air cooled 50, and water 50. But we moved from those Browning, those Browning medium machine guns and light machine guns into the middle era of war, Korean War, into Vietnam. And as we move further and further into more mobile forms of warfare, the weapons have to get lighter. And as the weapons get lighter, they have less kick. And as they have less kick, you have to they have less oomph when they hit something. You have to kind of adjust what their capabilities are, the distance. They change up a lot. And then suddenly you were trying to field weapons to fill a slot that you've created because that slot's always existed. But now it's kind of like, does that slot need to exist at this point? Because like, what is the real value of a light man portable machine gun? I mean, obviously it has the specific mission use of being a suppressive weapon and stuff. But like when you get into the highly kinetic street to street warfare, how much more valuable is that shoots, we're shooting fucking like NATO bottleneck rounds. We're shooting 5.56, 7.62. Is that much more useful than something like a fucking MP40? You know what I mean? Or just a submachine gun with an equivalently large magazine that's spring loaded or something you can shoot forever. Well, no, because that weapon has its own issues, and spring box mags are apparently very, very, very irritating to use and sometimes extremely unreliable, depending on the box mag. And they can wear out very fast because they need so much fucking spring to use so much ammo and this, that, and the other. So belts tend to be the best way to do it, but belts are, by literal definition, a percentage more cumbersome than just rounds in a magazine with a spring, and then you have to kind of work this out. And so all medium and light machine guns right now are sort of in an interesting, what do we do with these and where do we go directionally? Because we cannot rely on building a weapon that gets ran across a field, dropped onto a tripod, and then two guys shoot this down range, right? We don't use weapons like that anymore. Not like they can't be, but generally you see them on pintle mounts, on vehicles, vehicle mounts all the fucking time. That's where most of your fielded machine guns in country anywhere are going to be now, is hanging out the side of helicopters, hanging off the top of armored vehicles, and placed permanently on different little subsections of hard sites, and integrated into the firing systems of automatic turrets, right? And so like the man portability of it is not, you don't want to fucking build a weapon. The 240 is perfect for this because the 240, M240 Golf, or the M240 general system, Alpha through Juliet, I think it is, can be integrated into and is integrated into so many things. The last time I read the fucking manual was in like 2011. I think I still have it somewhere in this case back here. I might bust that out at some point. But it is in different setups integrated into all sorts of shit. You have different 240s that are specialized for being shot out of the side of helicopters, or being integrated into the turret systems of the Abrams tank, of other turret systems as well, you know, on the LARs maybe, or whatever it is. LAR people, I'm sorry. I know I'm probably wrong, but there is some sort of automatic turret on some sort of, not a vehicle that I fucked with, but that other people did, where the 240 is integrated into the turret, not just stuck on a pintle where it can come off and on. And they'll have different firing mechanisms. They'll be integrated into it different because they'll have type of feed wells, all this shit. So that modularity works really good for that medium machine gun. And so you can get a lot of that. You can buy a lot of receivers, a few different little pieces for modularity, and put that thing into the field as much as you fucking want. Whereas with this man portable thing, you're kind of fucking stuck, because if you have a vehicle, get the bigger gun, right? Fuck it. You know what I mean? If I'm carrying 500 pounds of rounds, I want 500 pounds of something that can actually punch through the shit that's fucking shooting back at me, which is not a 240. And so, you know, the 240, like, what are we going to do with this? Well, it has to be carryable. It has to shoot a machine gun speed and hit level. I need this much force, and I need this many fucking rounds coming out of it. And you're kind of just jammed up. And I've seen this in a lot of countries, how they're trying to field stuff over the last few years. I look here and there, but almost every fucking new weapons platform I've seen being offered for the last 10 years or so is a lot of, here's our rifle, and here's a way to turn our rifle into an automatic weapon, a squad automatic weapon of some sort. Not the 249, but something that fills the slot that the 249 will fill, without it having a bunch of issues and being overly heavy and being just a weird fucking gun. 249 is better than a lot of its contemporaries, particularly when it was fielded. This is not me saying it's a bad gun, like, and worthless and completely useless. I hate it because I had to carry it, and that will make you fucking hate the thing. I love the Benelli M1014 Super 90 because I had to carry it, and that fucking shotgun is basically perfect in my eyes. As far compared to other shotguns, it's pretty fucking good, with the notable exception of, if you drop it on a buttstock in a weird way, it will fire. But just don't drop it. But, like, you know, it is. The 16 has a lot of issues, but its lot of issues, from what I understand, over the last 10 years have been pretty much mitigated. With the 249, I don't know if that's the case. I've seen people constantly trying to replace it with this, that, and the other type of system. And the systems that have been offered to replace it or fill its spot in other militaries across the world there's been a lot of box fed options that I've seen. There's been a lot of small caliber, high punch options that I've seen. Shit that shoots like the fucking the FN57 round, you know, a gigantic box mag this big that would hold 100 fucking 5.56 rounds, and 400 of those fucking up jumped 22 bottlenecks that the FN57 shoots. and it's a little all over the place. So I will amend that saying the M249 is like terrible. Obviously, it's not terrible. We wouldn't fucking even put it out in the field because it would be unsafe and unsat to use. But I think just the and this is something I'd have to talk to an actual fucking like somebody that's a pro armorer in it. Like, look to other people for definitive answers in this. It's just that the squad automatic weapon as a specific article of equipment and a specific tool to solve a problem hit its peak usefulness in the most decisive battles of the most decisive wars of the modern era. And so there's always going to be kind of like the tank, a sweet spot in the American or in the heart of the American military eye when it comes to squad automatic weapons. It's very much like the tank where when it was fielded for the first time, it was a game changer. And so it feels like you always have to have it. But now in the modern era, it is seeing kind of not diminished and annihilated, but diminished returns relative to how difficult it is to implement one, train people up on it, get it out into the field, purchase it. It's like, would I rather just have somebody that has like a fucking smaller caliber? Because suppressive fire is worthless, bullet for bullet. You know what I mean? To an effective shot. So like, even if you want to have suppressive fire, having something that just shoots a fuckload of bullets that aren't as big can be pretty effective in getting that. You know, literally just hosing the side of a building is what you're doing. A lot of the times we're not fighting in Europe anymore, where back in the day they had a lot more wooden buildings and stuff and like glass windows because you lived in an area where people had trees to build it. You know, you keep fighting in the Middle East, and these Middle Eastern wars, they have big, heavy duty stone buildings to keep it cold during the winter, and that just don't see the fucking penetration that you want from smaller caliber rounds and stuff. So, you know, you can't just shoot up the building. It's not as good. Squad automatic weapons work not as good when it's sandy out. They just have more potential for fouling because there's more parts, there's more openings, there's more fire per shot. Every shot that you shoot fouls the barrel a little bit more, and if there's a sandstorm or sand, that fouls the barrel an additional a little bit more, maybe a lot, maybe a bit, but there's nothing you can do to fully mitigate it. So fast fire, fast fouling. It's just, that's the case. It's why you always have to clean the shit out of machine guns. And so it's interesting kind of like how that slot's going to be filled. The move from 7.62 ammo to 5.56 had to do with economics in the most fucked up way. I wouldn't be. I've heard a bunch of different rules. I'm convinced Tyler only joined the military because of his special interest. I was very interested in it, so I did drop. They're testing an M249 replacement. I wonder how it's going. Probably not great. I love talking about this shit. I'm so sorry. It's military section for just a second. People are like, this Tyler dude is hyper focused on me, and it's like somebody asked him a question about the M249 saw, and he just literally forgot that you exist. Which is true. They've been testing M249 replacements since I was in the military, and I got out in 2009. And they were testing them like, this is very, very seriously what's going to replace it. Look up actual military channels for this, because I don't want to. I'm going to say this off the top of my head because I don't have the time to research all this, but look it up yourself. I remember on my own, there was I believe it was, because we got like a military magazine, and then we would talk to people who were field testing it and shit. Because, you know, you run into recon Marines. Recon Marines always get to fucking test shit. And on my last deployment, I was assigned to walk these like civilian contractor electricians to change all the ballasts and the overhead lights in our fucking air, because I was just a spare lance corporal. So like, you have to go fucking walk these guys around while they change all the ballasts so the fucking trailers don't burn down in Camp Ripper Al-Assad. So if you're one of the recon Marines, that was me. I was the tall guy that was walking around with those dildos. But I talked to some recon Marines then and at other times too, and they would get to test stuff. And then I knew guys that were like in intel shops and shit. They get to test it, not necessarily because like they're so good at weapons. It's just a lot of them have pre-existing secret, top secret, high top secret, compartmentalized clearances that make it so that they can just preemptively go and test weapons, because all of those weapons tests are also in those classifications. So if you have an infantry person who has that fucking classification, it's just a perfect person, because otherwise they have to go and get top secret, compartmentalized, whatever the fuck, classifications just to see these fucking prototypes and stuff. So that's why you see those at the hyper preemptive fielding, and they talk about it anyway, so it's fine. And more than likely, all the stuff that I'm 1,000%, all this stuff that I'm about to talk about is, first off, going to be half inaccurate because of my brain damage, but also these things have either failed because the testing process doesn't last 15 fucking years. They're just not going to get it now, or it's already come and gone and maybe it's been added. But there were the Scar H system. If you guys know the Scar H and the history of the Scar H system was supposed to have a squad automatic weapon element with it. I don't know if it was actually a real thing that got field tested, because I know only civilian versions of the Scar H have ever been put out. But basically, imagine the Scar H system, if it's this big, because it's much bigger than that. Looks like plus chunk, and then it was fed. You could switch out some magic inside the receiver and either put on like a box mag or put in an actual belt feeding mechanism that went through the side. And it looked very similar with all the plastic and metal to like a Steyr AUG type deal. I remember seeing those, pictures of them at least, and hearing discussions from people that had fired those are similar type of things and been like, it's all right. But a lot of the replacements have been box mag focused that I've seen, because the box mags are their own thing. So a box mag works like this. It says, I'm saying box, but it's not a box, right? And I might even be saying it wrong. Drum magazine, but box is kind of how you tell it. So the drum magazines and these big box magazines, some of them that you wind it, click, 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 and you have to wind it all the way up in order to put enough mechanical pressure in there to send the rounds up, right? I am using the wrong terminology. I'm sorry. Our standard mags are box mags because they have a box spring in the mag and it is box shaped. So standard Stanag magazine, it's that little curved, semi-banana looking type thing. It's got a square rectangular-y magazine spring that goes up and it pushes it up like that. But when you only have 28 rounds, because you can't even load most of the old ones to 30, you put 28 rounds in it. That is kind of pushing how much strength. So you need a stronger spring. Stronger spring means more metal, means more push. The spring that twists like that has to be one of those kind of like on a stopwatch or whatever, okay? And you have to set it up in a way that the rounds will come freely out of the top, but you also won't accidentally have a fountain spray, which is apparently the biggest issue with a lot of those drum magazines, is that they will fail in some way, or there's something that you can touch and they will jettison the entirety of their internals by and spray out 150 rounds in an instant. The springs can also wear out from being under so much tension at one time that they don't have enough ass to push all of the rounds in, particularly when you get to the end of the spring and it has the least amount of potential energy basically left to push the rounds up. And so there's a lot of mathematics actually that goes into making one of those wind up drum mags. And the mathematics get particularly difficult because it's a fucking magazine. It's the least valuable part of the weapon generally. It's the one part that you have to throw it away, literally, put in a bag, hopefully. And so it's got to fit on a person. It's got to clip into the gun. It's got to sit in the gun. That's the biggest issue for a lot of them, is that the retention clip, pachink, that holds it in. On a Stanag mag, the standard one that goes into an M16, it's just a little punch slot in the side of the aluminum. And there's a tiny little square retention peg, basically, that goes in it, and it's on a little spring. So the retention peg comes out like that, and the magazine will fall out. The magazine sort of has to be pulled out when it's empty. When it's full, it wants to pop. Why? Because that magazine is full of bullets that have a big spring underneath them, and it pushes. So that spring is pushing on the bullets, which are pushing on the bottom of the bolt, and it's all being kind of like this. And so that when you fire and your bolt goes off, it goes chop and then pushes another one in. Bullet goes up, sorry, like this. So the bolt's here, your magazine's right there, and you and then you catch another and catch it. If the spring tension's too high, or the little top pieces are weird, or the bolt doesn't go forward fast enough because of a bunch of different reasons, you will actually have more than one bullet come up. If you're like, that sounds crazy, why don't multiple bullets come up? They do. It's called a stovepipe. Stovepipe malfunction. Boom, chomp, and then you have multiple jammed in there, multiple feed. Then you have to take the whole thing out. A lot of times when you have a multiple feed like that, and you pull it, if it's at the top of the magazine might be weird, and if it breaks, you pull it out and your fucking rounds go everywhere. That gun is now out of battery. It's out of fucking operation. It will not fire until you fix it. And a multi-feed is one of the worst, particularly when you have something that has a very powerful spring on it, like an open bolt machine gun weapon, because it can actually jam both bullets into the chamber, deforming them under heat. And sometimes they can fucking like weirdly half fire. They'll pop. It'll burn the gas back. It might just jam them and bend them up and all kinds of stuff. And that heat that they're already experiencing and that pressure from the bolt just hitting them one time, even if it doesn't fire them, can like basically sort of pressure weld them in place. And you have to like get in there with an armorer who has to use special tools. Just fucking any sort of fucking pliers or whatever that's not going to scrape all the chrome off, I guess. And then they have to pull that shit out. And that might be, if that happens in combat, you might as well just fucking start beating somebody with a gun over the head, because that's the only way you're going to get any effect out of it. Isn't that why you don't fill the mag to full? Yeah, as I was saying, it's 28 rounds. It busts the bolt. It should not break. Your bolt should not break from an overfilled magazine. If that happens, that bolt fucking gonna go anyway. But it can interrupt the bolt. One of the biggest things with the 30 round Stanag mags that we had was if you did push them to 30, a lot of times the return spring on the M16's gas operated, and it fires off of a very small round. So the return spring on it, which goes over this little spring holder back into the buttstock of the gun, it goes back and forth like that. That spring is one of the weakest springs I think that exists on any of the fielded weapons that I've ever used while I was in the Marine Corps. The strongest spring, the most irritating one that would hurt you, was the 240 spring. The 50 cal is actually like way more powerful, but for some reason when you put the M2 back together, that spring is nowhere near as big of a pain in the ass as the fucking the 240 spring. The 240 spring will just get you. The 249 spring, I think I remember being a pain in the ass. Oh, that's like the double, triple coil fucking thing. I digress. But the return spring, those return springs are on return spring rods that are this thin, right? It's like this, literally that thin, with a really tightly wound, skinny spring on it. Got a lot of push. The M16's return spring are big. It's really round. It goes around a haze me now, I can't fucking remember the name of the thing, but it goes around this little stick in the back of the buttstock, right? And then that holds it up. And it's very, very weak. And so it does not have the pressure to push those fucking rounds off of those springs, because the spring is under so much pressure and the rounds are under so much pressure at the top that it'll actually fucking hit and go like this, top, and get stuck. And then you have to smash the fucking forward assist in order to get it to send home. So you just don't even put 30 rounds in. You don't even put 29 rounds in because it can still get stuck. You put 28, which is great because I was in 2.8 and Marines love fucking numerology like you wouldn't believe. Buffer tube. Thank you. The fucking buffer tube. That is correct. That is what the buffer tube. Surely I keep my boot photo on my wall. I've got one around here somewhere. I'm get into another argument with Laura Lodge wearing your dress blues. I seem to remember a friend saying that last round can damage the spring, but I'm a Brit, so I have no clue. I can't imagine any that happening. I don't even know what that means. The springs absorb the impact of a fucking bullet exploding. So they're very strong. I've never seen that. Might be a different gun. If he's British and you're talking about the L86, fucking British. If you guys don't know, the British military fields this aluminum monstrosity called the L86, which is just an embarrassment. You know how like you guys have like a worse version of like special effects in all of your hall. It is the most. L86 looks like it was designed for a Doctor Who special. Let me just put it that way. It is the ugliest fucking gun. Hold on. L. Am I saying the right rifle, right? It doesn't even bring up the. Okay, the SA80. L85, L86. Look at this. This is what this fucking thing looks like. It's ugliest goddamn gun you've ever fucking seen in your life. Oh, I don't have that anymore. So this is like the L86 or L85, whichever. SA80 is what they're calling it here. This is another one that has the. This is another version. This is supposed to be kind of like a saw type version for this thing. This goddamn gun is apparently one of the least reliable rifles in the history of military rifles. Check this out. This is one with one of these big fucking drum mags. This is Call of Duty. Call of Duty gives it more credit because drum mags never go bad. What is going on? British Marines, answer for this. Answer for this right now. Oh, that's an airsoft weapon. But this thing is just all aluminum. It has more it's plate stamped, right? So it's not, there's not a lot of hard forged parts. That's one of the most notable things about the 16 is that it is like cold forged or whatever. A lot of the parts of the M16 are very, very solid metal. And it's not stamped, so you can beat the fuck out of an M16 and not much will happen to it. And because it's thicker chunks of metal, there's less places for stuff to get in. From what I understand with the L86 or the L85, the SA80, whatever you want to call it, it's stamped, and they've just been trying to fix it for decades now. And it looks absurd. It looks fucking uncomfortable to deal with by far. It's bullpup, so it's full of a ton of issues. It's from the bullpup era of making weapons where basically this is the same thing where they're trying to solve, like, for squad automatic weapons now. They were trying to make weapons lighter and more faster firing and weight efficient back in the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s. Kind of coming through and then ending the Vietnam War. Look up actual weapons channels. Everything that I'm saying, I know because of fucking Forgotten Weapons. And so the bullpup design kind of came out. And the bullpup basically takes in a normal weapon, right? I shoot gun, boom, boom, boom. The magazine's here, and the bolt goes, or the bullets go here, and the bolt goes chop, 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 chop. Okay, and so that means that the chamber starts here. It also keeps all of the operation group right there. On the bullpups, your gun is here. All right, your bolt is back here, and the magazine is here. And so when the magazine's here, all of this operating group has to spread out, and the spring changes, but you get way more barrel for less space overall. And they thought they were going to get a submachine gun amount of weight and space taken up, a submachine gun amount of weight and space taken up, while having a rifle's worth of barrel and rifling, which will make the bullets much effective when you shoot them. Has not worked out like that, apparently. There are, from what I understand, good bullpup weapons. None of them have ever been issued to standard forces in almost any Western nation. And the most powerful and largest military on the planet, ours, does not use them, with the notable exception of, I think, some version of the Sasser is maybe bullpup. I can't remember, but that doesn't matter anyway. It's fine as long as you don't use it. God help you if you're left-handed. There's no advantage to a bullpup LMG, right? The thing is, they are, I think Royal Marine Commandos get the M4 these days. I would want one too. Jeez. The L86A1 was terrible. They had to give it to HK, who replaced everything except like the selector switch. L85A3 is fine. Okay, well, in that case. Like 2 special forces use the P90, and the P90 is space magic. P90 is actually one of the coolest fucking weapons that have ever existed. It addresses all of the problems by not trying to make some, but also no one fucking uses the P90, even though they probably should. The issue with the L85, from what I understand, is people are saying it breaks super easy, and it has had to be completely fucking reconstructed from the ground up, basically, to be put functionally out there. But these bullpup guns all had basically the same issues, where the trade-offs, the standard rifle was designed the way that it was, kind of because that's the most efficient way to put everything together. You have a nice tiny little control group right here. You have your magazine right here. You have your bolt group and your return spring group right here, and you can bury all that in the buttstock. And so you have a nice little line of operating groups that go into the chamber, that goes into the barrel, that goes out. The entire construction of firearms is based around creating a line from an explosion through an object into a target, right? And so kind of arranging all of your mechanics behind that was the sensible thing sort of to do, you know? And so you can actually arrange the operations of the group. They happen back and forth again and again and again down that line. Like literally you can see it. And so the bullpups sort of took that slightly and mixed it up a bit, right? Which they thought would give them a lot more oomph. Autocannon recoilless rifles fire like this, and it makes way more sense, because a lot of these big ass fucking recoilless rifles, you can move the operating group down because it shoots like one fucking shot, and the thing's 12 feet fucking long. Who gives a fuck? The FAMAS is good. The VHS from Croatia is good. The bullpup design made sense during the Cold War. The designs were hard to break. Rifle was smaller than a full-length rifle, so handy to use getting in and out of APCs and in urban settings. The Steyr AUG I trained on in the Irish Defence Forces Reserves is great. It is bomb-proof and very handy. Terrible trigger, but does that matter for infantry? I guess it depends. So here's the thing. If the weapon is dog shit, and it looks like shit, and it fucking operates like shit, but you field it, and it gets everything done, and everyone comes home, it's a perfectly fine weapon. If you put it, I can talk shit about a gun all day, but if you give it to the people that need to use it, they use it, it works, and they come home alive, you got nothing to say. You know what I mean? But basically, the issues with those guns sort of pop up right around there, and then they kind of expand afterward. The trigger issues are a lot of times because the trigger on the 16 is literally all right here. You can actually look and watch it operate. The trigger for those bullpups, the operating group can't be here because this is a barrel. The operating group has to be back here. So the trigger is very often a long piece or two long pieces of metal that sort of stretch back into the weapon and then move the same pieces back then. It's kind of like adding a stick to a light switch kind of deal. It can work, and in the P90 it works fantastic, right? But the P90 is a little bit smaller, and it's designed completely from the ground up for that sort of thing. It's got a novel magazine, it's got a novel round. Everything about the P90 is the P90 and the Fabrique Nationale 7 setup. Is it FN? Am I actually saying, is that Fabrique Nationale? Is that why it's FN 57? If I said that wrong, I feel very embarrassed. But it's cool. The VHS from Croatia is good. I think I know about the VHS is like a fucking, like, actually like a sick ass gun, right? I don't know too much about it. The VHS looks like psycho shit if it's the right gun. VHS Croatia. Yeah, this fucking thing. This thing looks so fucking cool. Obviously, like, in the same vein of a FAMAS, if it's not just a FAMAS. VHS 2 assault rifle, modern firearms. But I think that these look very cool. I think they look fucking sick. And if they work, they work. Wow, that's hot. Nothing else to say. Lort. The other thing is you also do have to make these ambidextrous. You have to, because 16, it's irritating. It does shoot out the right side, so it's a pain in the ass for left-hand shooters. So the round has to go somewhere. If you're like me and you're right-handed, the round goes that way. If you're left-handed and you shoot left-handed with a 16, the round goes right across your face, which is not ideal. It doesn't make it impossible to use, but it is what it is. With these bullpups, your face can get all the way up here. You know what I mean? The round isn't extracting over here. Yeah, okay. Making sure that I was looking at the right screen. The round isn't extracting up here. It's extracting right next to your fucking face. And so it could fucking fling right into your face if you don't. But a lot of these have, you can sort of see the way that this is shaped. You can set it up so that it ejects in either way, which is a lot of modernized weapons. That is usually an indication that it was made at least after the 1960s or 70s, because everyone was fucking immediately sick of the M16 when it became NATO standard, because it fucking made left-hand shooting a pain in the ass. It's one of the best things about Gun Jesus. Ian McCollum, left-handed, and he will always remind you whether or not you can field that weapon effectively to your entire military or just roughly 85% of it.
Hope you enjoyed your time on the West Side.